William become King of America unofficially. That's what the latest Gallup poll results show when it comes to news makers. As it turns out, Prince William is viewed favorably by 59% of Americans. 59%. Our own current and former presidents of the United States only rank at 41%. They're tied for it. So this raises a lot of interesting questions about William's role within the broader world, that Americans, even though we're not in England, we fought a whole war to get rid of the royal family, we still view him rather favorably. King Charles is also on that list, but he comes under that 49% threshold. Prince William, by far, he's only seconded by Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky when it comes to favorability. So what does that tell us, not only about Prince William and the United States, but the role royals play within the broader world and the roles they play within their own country? I think this is an interesting idea to explore because unfortunately what Harry and Meghan have done over the last 3 years is very much confuse royalty and celebrity. And Harry and Meghan have dipped very much into politics and all these sorts of things that can become very divisive when it comes to the broader public. However, royals have this unique and interesting role where they stay above the fray. And as we've seen, even though Harry and Meghan have been campaigning, I think, for the last 3 years to be seen as at least the Prince and Princess of America, Prince William still wins out at the end of the day among Americans. And so we're going to explore this today and have a broader discussion about royalty, which will be fun. And if you guys haven't been here before, my name is Brittany. I provide compelling royal commentary about the latest news. Sometimes we dip into a little bit of gossip, but we try to pull from very reputable sources here. So if you guys want to subscribe, that'd be awesome. I also have a weekly newsletter. I have a fashion channel, which is awesome. I just went over the Belgian tiaras and I'm going to go through all the major families and their tiara collections, which are very, very impressive. And then I also have a membership program. So if you're interested in becoming a member and getting some special perks, you can check that out. You can't do it on your phone, unfortunately, but you can do it on your desktop. Yeah, I know. I don't know why YouTube's doing that. I'm trying to figure it out. We will figure it out. But before we dip into this whole issue of Prince William and this poll, which is very, very good for him, by the way, it's supremely good for him. Most politicians would kill for his poll numbers. I'm going to tell you why I'm wearing my military-inspired dress today. I mean, you can't see all of it, but it has these buttons that go all the way down. It's very military. And the reason I'm doing that is because we have some new military appointments that Charles and the royal family have just announced. It includes William and Catherine and the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. So I'm going to share with you guys some of the regiments that they have been given. And these military appointments, I honestly don't know that much about the UK military structure, so I cannot answer the vast majority of the questions. But let's celebrate it anyways, because I think military things always make me cry. Like, I watched the World War II in HD, makes me cry. Vietnam War in HD makes me cry. I don't know why. Soldier things always, yeah. So let's talk about some of these military appointments. So His Majesty the King has become the sponsor of the HMS Queen Elizabeth, which is I don't know if it's a destroyer or an aircraft carrier. I think it's an aircraft carrier. Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards, Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Tank Regiment, Captain General of the Royal Artillery, Captain General of the Honourable Artillery Company, Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Regiment of Scotland, Royal Honorary Air Commodore of the RAF Marham, and the Air Commodore-in-Chief of the RAF Regiment. And Her Majesty the Queen has become the patron of the Royal Army's Chaplains Department. That's actually kind of cool because Army chaplains, I think, fulfill a very important role because when you're on the battlefield, you have a lot of questions about life and morality and all those sorts of things, and I think chaplains are a great resource there to help the troops. Then we also have His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales has become Colonel-in-Chief of the Mercurian Regiment, Colonel-in-Chief of the Army Air Corps, and the Honorary Air Commander of the RAF Valley. And one of those was Prince Harry's former regiment. Isn't that funny? That funny. The royals are very good at that very subtle diss. They're just very, very subtle. Which is all ironic because Prince Harry is on his pseudo-royal tour. Because again, Harry and Meghan want to be royals, but they're not royals. So Harry's doing the pseudo-royal tour of Asia. And as it turns out, look what he's doing. The royal family, I mean, I don't think they're that dedicated to it. But there's a very gentle, like, we just gave William this honorary guard. Oops, sorry. Yeah, that was your regiment, right? Right? You could have served there, but you decided not to. Anyways, Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales has become the Commodore-in-Chief of the Fleet Air Arm, Colonel-in-Chief of the 1st Queen's Dragoon Guards, and Royal Honorary Air Commodore of the RAF Coningsby. So lots of exciting news out of the UK there. That is some great reshuffling that they're doing, obviously, and very much, again, streamlining. For example, they could have added perhaps Princess Beatrice or Eugenie to one of those royal military appointments. They decide not to. So again, shows that the streamlining is happening. They're reformatting things, redoing things, and changing things up and shuffling things around. The couple of interesting people they didn't mention who are still currently working royals are Princess Alexandra of Kent and the Duke of Kent. So they are brother and sister. And so the Duke of Kent is pushing 90. Princess Alexandra is already over 90. So they are very much in their elder years, in their twilight years in terms of royal service. So they didn't really get any new appointments. But I know they continue to serve His Majesty the King very, very well in honor of their cousin, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And it shows that royal life moves on. And ironically, when it comes to William, apparently he is the person who Americans can somewhat unite around in terms of having a favorable view of him. And this is really, 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 really interesting because he's a newsmaker. That's kind of how they decide this list. We don't know if Harry was on it or not, but they were looking at people within the broader public who have an impact on how we view our world and people we could perhaps see as favorable as Americans, because right now we are very much a divided country. We've always been somewhat divided, but I feel like those divisions have become more entrenched. And so the sections are being moved further and further out. So when it comes to finding somebody that everybody can kind of agree, yeah, you know what, we kind of sort of like this person, that's a very rare case anymore. As it turns out, Prince William fits the bill. So according to Gallup, and this is a very well-respected polling company, I think somebody asked me, I mentioned it on Twitter, and for some reason I got a whole bunch of like Sussex stands in that post. I'm like, what? And when somebody was responding going, well, where did you hear that? I'm like, from Gallup. It's like right there in the link, you know, it's Gallup Poll, very well-respected, utilized all the time. They track, you know, abortion statistics, you know, gay marriage, all these sorts of things that they have been tracking for years and years and years. It's highly, highly reputable. This is not like, you know, the average newspaper going, let's just put a survey on our website. No, this was conducted with the utmost efficiency. So here are the parameters and here's what they were looking for. They said a new Gallup poll suggests U.S. may need to look beyond its borders to find public figures that a majority of Americans feel good about and that Republicans and Democrats can agree on. The United Kingdom's Prince William emerges as the strongest candidate to serve this U.S. unifying role. It's just so funny. It's so funny. His 59% favorable rating from Americans is the highest of 15 prominent figures rated, essentially tied with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky at 57%. And so next highest, and again, this doesn't even reach the 50% threshold, is Jill Biden at 49%. And honestly, for a first lady, I feel like that should be higher. But again, I think the entrenching of political divisions, everything, people aren't quite there. And then we have King Charles, still ranks higher than our own presidents, by the way, at 46%. We have the Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden both sit at 41 and 41%. Interesting, just interesting because the presidential election is coming up next year. Fascinating statistic here. We have Donald Trump unfavorable at 55%, Joe Biden 57%. That's so interesting. I would think it would be the reverse. I would think it would totally be the reverse. I mean, those statistics aren't really that much difference, but still, it's quite telling here even that even though a lot of people absolutely hate Donald Trump, even in this poll, he is doing slightly better than Biden in terms of unfavorable, which is fascinating. So technically, Donald Trump in this case actually ranks higher than Biden. I mean, their favorables are both the same, but still. We have Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas at 39, Kamala Harris, the Vice President, 38, Speaker of the House, 37%, Ron DeSantis, 37%, Mike Pence, 35%, House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries, 31%, Attorney General Merrick Garland, 31%. And bringing up the rear, guys, is Russian President Vladimir Putin at 2%. Nobody likes Vladimir Putin. But nobody likes their own politicians either. That's the thing. What's fascinating about America is I think Congress, even though we all vote in the same people every single stinking time, the favorability ratings for Congress are like in the teens always. So let me just double check and see where Congress resides right now. And again, once again from Gallup. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Congress is handling its job? That is the question. The answer is 19% approve, 77% disapprove, and 4% have no opinion. So 77% of the country disapproves of the job of the politicians that we all voted into office. Just putting that out there right now. Just, ugh. Our political system is brilliant, and yet at the same time needs some term limits here. So that is very, very interesting. So what does this tell us about royals? Because when I saw that there, I was like, I'm not surprised. And this is why the monarchy system, the constitutional monarchy system, it works. The reason is that politics gets mired in all this controversy and negativity and mudslinging and all these sorts of things. And what royals can do is they act as the head of state. So what this means is that they are the representative, the face of the government abroad in many ways, whereas the prime minister actually involves and it does the functions of the government. And because a lot of times these foreign tours, yes, they discuss important things, but oftentimes it's just a place to get your picture taken and, you know, shake a hand and talk to people. And when those important meetings need to happen, of course, the actual politicians are there who make policy. But when it comes to being the face of the country abroad, shaking hands, meeting people, and giving people a good sense of your country, why it's the royals who stand there. Because the advantage is that when it comes to, for example, the United States, our country cycles through presidents every 4 to 8 years. And so our head of state, because our head of state and head of governance is the same person, that person changes. And so you could have radical swings in policy between different administrations based on their politics. And when it comes to the UK, right around the Queen's death, we had about 3 prime ministers within the span of a couple months, because Boris Johnson resigned, Liz Truss came in, and then she resigned after 8 weeks. And then we have the latest prime minister. And so we've had this whole cycle. So imagine if Liz Truss, not only was she prime minister, but she was actually your head of state. And then she quickly gets swept under the rug and they have somebody else. So the advantage of a monarchy system is that when it comes to stability, when it comes to your public image, you have one person leading, and that person is not mired in the politics, not mired in the policy, and they can be there for potentially decades. The Queen was head of state of the United Kingdom for 70 years. She stood there as times changed, as government changed, as policy changed, as the world changed. Like when she was born, I remember I was reading a book, The Queen of Our Times, is that when she was born, they had the first television displayed in a window. And I mean, that was in the 1920s. Obviously, we've had huge advances since then. Our little phone now is basically a television. Who would have thought the Queen saw all this massive change within her lifetime? And even though, yes, she didn't make huge, broad, sweeping changes, or she didn't influence policy in the same way, she was this steady rock within this storm of situations coming out. She was the one steady thing that people could always look to. And now that role has fallen to Charles, unfortunately, because of the whole Wales's divorce drama and everything like that, and his affair with Camilla, I don't think is probably going to achieve the same level of love and respect as the Queen has, because the Queen was very much keep your head down, never complain, don't explain, all these sorts of things. And it served her very, very well. And when you look at somebody like Prince William, he's done a really, really good job of trying to elevate causes that mean a lot to him, and yet staying out of the fray of getting too into, perhaps you could say, engaged in the charitable cause of the minute. So when it comes to an issue like climate change, this one has become very, very political and divisive in a lot of ways, because there are people who are just radical, like, we need to change things now, we need to do all these things now, we need to disrupt the future of the planet in order to, quote unquote, save it. And we have the Stop Oil people, they're destroying paintings and sculptures and buildings and all these sorts of things, because they're like, if we don't do something now, we must do something now. We have all this control in this scenario. If they don't do something, then the planet will disintegrate and die. I don't know, totally believe, but that's the essence of their thing. It's like, if we don't do something now, by 2050, we'll be boiling, is their scenario. I happen to take a broader view of the idea of climate change, which is that the world or the globe itself fluctuates. It goes up and down. And yes, we impact it, of course we do. But what I found really interesting is that there is actually a whole new growth of archaeology that's coming out because glaciers have started to melt. They've revealed new settlements that we never knew existed. They've revealed new forests and all these sorts of things. So it's terrible that the glaciers are melting, yes. But I gotta think too, well, at some point the earth must have been hotter because there's people who live there. There were trees that lived there. So maybe it's not all on us to radically change everything. I just try to take a more holistic approach to the scenario, and I think, well, I can do little things. I like recycling. I do a lot of recycling. I believe we all need to be good stewards of our environment. Like, I don't litter, I throw things in the trash, and like, I try to do things well, but I just don't go crazy. And so Prince William, he has the Earthshot Prize. And now if he was telling us like radical things like, you must change every aspect of your life, you must do this, you must do that, and that we need to, you know, you can't drive your car anymore, you must get electric, and all these sorts of things. It's like, well, yes, electric cars are great, but they also put a lot of strain on the electrical systems, which usually sometimes require coal to use, nuclear to use. There's a lot of different scenarios. But what I love about what Prince William is doing is that he's focused on how do we innovate what we already have, and how do we innovate in order to address this issue before it goes perhaps too far. I think that's a great approach to make because it appeals to people on the more radical end of the spectrum, and it's attractive to me as somebody who I'd say is probably a little bit right of the spectrum, but not somebody who's way far right either. I'm a little bit more right of center, but I'm still in the vein of let's protect our planet the best we can. And that's the brilliance of Earthshot Prize and other projects Catherine and William are doing, is that even if, for example, they maybe touch on subjects that could be considered political, they're doing it very much in a broad sense that can bring a lot of people together. That's the brilliance of it. That's the brilliance of royals, is that this ability to bring people together. So you have Earthshot Prize over here, which I think has a broad appeal and relies on human innovation to change things, allowing people to basically live their lives but innovate at the same time, which I think is fantastic. And then you have Harry over here, who has Travelist, who's basically saying that, guess what? Your hotel, they can judge you on your environmental dedication. They can say, oh, they used too many towels. Click. Oh, they took the wrong seat on the airline. Click. Yeah, literally. Like, if you're on an airplane, this is so dumb. And they basically say, well, if you sit in economy class, well, guess what? You have less of a carbon footprint than the person in first class, even though the whole plane is going anyways. So if the first class is full anyways, what does it matter if you sit in economy versus first, because the carbon in first is still getting used? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Oh my gosh, make it make sense to me. Make it like, ugh. So Travelist very much is burdening people and telling people, well, if you don't do X, you're a burden on the system. Whereas again, I think Earthshot Prize is encouraging something that can change the world in the future. That's the great thing about royals. And this is the role that all royals play. Yes, sometimes they dip their toe gently into something that could be considered controversial, but they try to stay above the fray. And because of that, they can be a uniting figure. They can be a uniting figure compared to politics, again, which gets into sort of the trenches and does the mudslinging. The royals can be the voice of reason in any given situation. They can do the showy things and allow some of the behind the scenes more nasty business of politics to be done by politicians. So I'm not surprised that Americans are perhaps attracted to Prince William. He's non-controversial in a lot of ways. He's looking to change the world in positive ways. He wants to address homelessness. We have a huge homelessness problem here in our country. If they have good pilot programs in the UK, I mean, granted, we have so many issues attributed to our homelessness issue that that may not be the same in what William's doing, but maybe we could adopt some of those principles, utilize them in our own cities. We're not being required to change. He is uniting and giving us, perhaps you could say, a plan for the future. I think also William is a pretty good leader. We have the Earthshot Prize, we have his new homelessness project. And so he is able to do these projects, and he's able to be a leader, and he looks strong. Yes, he is, I'm sure, a great family man. It looks like he has a wonderful time with his kids, but we don't have the situation like we have with Harry and Meghan, where People magazine basically tells us in their home, Meghan makes all the decisions. Harry's not a strong leader. He's not. If in his home he is dominated by his wife, he's not really a strong figure. And not to say that perhaps William, as the leader of the household in his own family, I'm sure he consults with Catherine all the time. I would imagine that's a lot of the case with them. And so they're very much a partner unit. So even though he leads, she is there in partnership with him, rather than we have Harry and Meghan, where Meghan is demanding and leading everything and Harry's following behind. How can you get behind somebody like Harry who doesn't even lead in his own home? Especially as a man, there's just, to a certain extent, a difference between men and women that just doesn't seem to attract the public in quite the same way. And so this all comes back to this great irony that Harry and Meghan, despite leaving the British royal family and actively advocating subtly, not publicly, but subtly, to be the Prince and Princess of America, they have utterly failed there. I don't know why exactly Harry's name was left off the list. They probably thought, well, he doesn't really have any power. He's a private citizen. Who cares? And so they didn't even feel fit to invite him. If you look at the list, everybody basically has a prominent government role in some way. You have Zelensky, who's the president of Ukraine. You have the king, you have the Prince of Wales, and then the rest are all American public figures. We have a couple of Supreme Court justices. We did basically the leadership of the House. We had the vice president. We had people who are very much political figures in the United States. And William came out on top. That tells you so much. So Harry and Meghan's advocacy to become the Prince and Princess of America has completely and utterly failed. And I think there's a lot of reasons, like I said, the leadership ideal, that Harry and Meghan also dip into politics a lot more. Meghan was actively calling politicians on Capitol Hill to advocate for parental family leave. Now, granted, I've actually been in a couple of discussions about that, so I'm somewhat familiar with the topic. And there are actually people on both sides of the aisle who are interested in addressing this issue, but from different sides, of course. They have different solutions to the issue. But Meghan was particularly calling certain politicians, and I think hoping to get them to flip their side. That's not what a royal should be doing. And as a royal doing that, she is interfering in American politics using a English title. That's totally different. William, if he has a great plan in the Earthshot Prize, let's say, or no, let's take the homelessness program, because I think that one's a little bit easier. Let's say there's a great policy that they discover in their Homewards program. And so they discover this policy, like, hey, let's pull this in here to address the issue that's going on, let's say, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so they can pull that in, but it's not William shoving it down there. They've discovered something, they share it with the rest of the world, they adopt it, and it works somewhere else. It's a great system. It's a great system, rather than having Harry and Meghan advocating for their political positions. We even had Meghan telling us to vote. We know that high-ranking members of the royal family generally don't vote because, again, it seems like it's interference in policy that they don't necessarily implement, but they are somewhat a face of, because if you do represent the United Kingdom, you do represent its policies. Again, these are all very complicated things, but Harry and Meghan have done themselves and the rest of the United Kingdom very much a disservice by confusing what's royalty and what's celebrity. Harry and Meghan are celebrities trying to act like royalty. Harry's going to Singapore. Why? To raise money and do a little bit of a royal tour, essentially. He's not royal anymore, though. So he doesn't have the weight of the United Kingdom behind him. He has the weight of Archewell and his own business interests and Meghan's desire to get more Dior clothing. That's what he has behind him. And so it changes the dynamic of what he's doing, because he's not doing it just for altruistic reasons. He's potentially doing it to pad his own bank account. And again, that comes into very much a confusion of what you're doing. Royals do everything via charity. Yes, they get money from the Duchy of Cornwall, the Duchy of Lancaster. So William controls the Duchy of Cornwall. Charles controls the Duchy of Lancaster. And then you also have the Sovereign Grant. But the Sovereign Grant does things like keeps up with royal households, because a lot of these buildings, like Buckingham Palace, is undergoing an extensive renovation. Very, very expensive, because it's an old building. It's a big building. And guess what? It's probably not that great a place to live in. Like, really? Most of those places probably aren't. They have to do a lot to make it livable in our modern age. And so that requires a lot of upkeep. And a building like that, at any time there's a crack, there's a leak, they probably leave it. They probably leave it for a while until they either get the money, the time, the effort, the energy, whatever, to address it, because it's a big building. You need not a 10-foot ladder that most Americans have in their home. They need a 20, 30-foot ladder to get up to whatever ceiling that they need to fix. So it becomes very much more complicated. So the Sovereign Grant pays for that. It pays for foreign tours, state visits, different things that are the function of the aspect of being a representative of state, which is what the monarchy is. Now, when it comes to their personal things, they're funded privately. So when it comes to their charitable enterprises, in a very different way than Harry and Meghan, their charitable enterprises function as solely charitable enterprises. Obviously, they have to pay their staff members, they have to pay advertising sometimes, technology, they have to pay different things, but they're not paying Catherine and William to be representatives of Earthshot Prize, because the Earthshot Prize is a charity that doesn't have to give any money to its founder to function. But Harry and Meghan, it could be much different now, because Harry is walking through this tour and he has an Archwell cap on his head when he arrives in Tokyo. So Harry, who are you representing here? Yourself? Archwell, which is your charity, which most of the money went into a bank account and wasn't touched, rather than being given to various charitable enterprises. Or are you representing Meghan, the brand of Sussex? It's very much confusing as to who Harry represents now, because anytime he goes out, he's potentially always making money for himself while having the perhaps logo of his charity behind him. Whereas when William goes, for example, the Earthshot Prize in Singapore, any money raised there goes to the Earthshot Prize. It doesn't go to William. It's not siphoned by William in any way. So this is the benefit of royalty, I think, is royalty can be the great unifying force. They can be uniting, not only, like I said, in leadership when it comes to William, they can represent charities and various different interests, and they can stay out of politics. But what they also do, which I think would be such a cool aspect about being a royal, is that you get to represent your country's history, heritage, traditions, and culture to the broader world. That's what you get to do. You get to share these amazing different aspects about your culture, and you get to learn about others. How cool it would be to go on a royal tour and get to do all the crazy things Catherine and William do. Things that most normal tourists would just never get a chance to. It's very much a different way of living and representing a country. And it's something Harry and Meghan have given up, and the relentless pursuit of fame. And so Catherine and William, I think, are the great representatives. That's why when it comes to Americans, if they were given a vote between William and Harry, they go with William, because William's a leader. William's a uniter. William, yes, he addresses some political issues, but he also surrounds them with things that many people can get behind, not a small number of people can get behind, like Harry and Meghan. And I think people see him as a influential person who's changing the culture, yet representing history and tradition of his country. And I think that's a great mixture to have. And I see that in so many other European royals. We have Crown Princess Victoria, who I think is a wonderful representative of Sweden. We have Crown Prince Frederick and Mary of Denmark. We have Crown Prince Haakon and Mette-Marit of Norway. We have the Princess of Orange over in the Netherlands, and Queen Maxima and King Willem Alexander. We have Princess Elizabeth of the Belgians. She's still in college, so she'll start her working royal career here, I think, somewhat in the next couple of years. We have Princess Leonor in Spain, and we obviously have all the monarchs as well. And they all have this very, very important function of representing the state, representing their country, and yet staying above the politics. That's why, even though they'll reign for decades, and people will wonder, oh, why do we pay for royals? But they're there to be there in times of trouble. They're there to be the steady rock in the sea of storm of politics. And that's, I think, the great thing about royals. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think of Prince William, perhaps being the Prince of America unofficially. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.